Hello. I used to think life was straightforward. Meet someone you love, marry them, build a life together, and everything else just works itself out. That was the idea. Anyway, my wife, Stephanie, and I had been together for almost a decade. She was 33, and I had just turned 35. We didn't have kids, but we had what I thought was a solid marriage. Sure, we had disagreements like any couple, but nothing that made me think twice about her loyalty or love. It started with small things. She became more distant, always distracted when we talked. She started staying late at work, claiming her projects were demanding more of her time. At first, I wanted to believe her. I told myself it was just the ebb and flow of married life, that stress or exhaustion was making her act differently. But as the weeks turned into months, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my gut that something was off. The first real red flag came when I found an unfamiliar receipt in her car, a dinner for two at a fancy restaurant across town. It was the kind of place we would only go to on special occasions. When I asked about it, she waved it off, saying it was just a client dinner, nothing to worry about. Her tone was dismissive, almost annoyed, like I was making a mountain out of a molehill. The real doubts started to creep in after that. She changed the password on her phone, something she'd never done before. Her work trips became more frequent and longer. I couldn't ignore it anymore, so I started paying closer attention. One night, she was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message preview popped up from someone named Alex. It read, "Last night was unforgettable. Can't wait for next time." My heart sank. My mind raced. Who the hell was Alex? And what had they done last night? I didn't confront her right away. I wasn't ready. I needed to know more before I threw our entire life into chaos. That's when I decided to dig deeper. I installed tracking software on her phone, something I never thought I'd stoop to. It felt wrong, but at the same time, I was desperate. I had to know the truth. What I found shattered me. Late-night texts and calls, hotel bookings under a shared pseudonym, and even a few blurry pictures of her with a man I didn't recognize. It all painted a picture I couldn't deny anymore. Stephanie was cheating on me. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to demand answers. But I stopped myself. If I exploded without a plan, she could lie her way out of it, twist the story, make me the villain for invading her privacy. So I waited, played dumb, and kept collecting evidence. Every day felt like a waking nightmare. I had to sit across from her at dinner, listen to her stories about work, and pretend I didn't know she was lying through her teeth. I started avoiding her when I could, spending more time at work or with friends. But even then, I couldn't escape the thoughts swirling in my head. Who was this man? How long had it been going on? Did she even love me anymore? Then came the night I caught her in the act. I had tracked her to a boutique hotel on the other side of town. Heart pounding, I drove there, parked down the block, and waited. Sure enough, she and the man, Alex, emerged from the hotel hours later, laughing and holding hands like two teenagers in love. I snapped a few pictures with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. It wasn't enough to see it, though. I needed to confront her, to hear her admit what she'd done. But not yet. I wasn't ready. I had a plan forming in my mind, something that would hit her harder than any argument or confrontation ever could. For now, I went home and sat in the dark, replaying everything in my mind. Every moment of our marriage that I thought was real now felt like a lie. My stomach churned, and my chest felt like it was being crushed under the weight of betrayal. This wasn't just about her infidelity. It was about the years I'd given her, the trust I'd placed in her, and the life we'd built together. All of it was crumbling, and I had no idea how I was going to pick up the pieces. But one thing was certain. Stephanie wasn't going to get away with this unscathed. After that night at the hotel, the world seemed quieter but heavier. I didn't bring up what I'd seen with Stephanie. Not yet. I played my part as the clueless husband, nodding at her stories and pretending to care about her increasingly nonsensical excuses. Inside, though, I was unraveling. Every smile and casual laugh a thread pulled loose from the life we'd built together. I needed more than just photographs. I needed something indisputable, undeniable, something she couldn't spin into a misunderstanding or an overreaction. I started tracking every move she made, logging her whereabouts, her calls, even her spending habits. If she was going to dismantle our marriage with her lies, I was going to be there to catch every last piece of debris. That's how I discovered her secret second phone. It was tucked away in her gym bag, which she left carelessly in the back seat of her car. She rarely left the bag unattended, but one night after dinner, I saw my chance. She was upstairs showering when I slipped out and grabbed it. The passcode wasn't difficult to guess. It was the birth year of her younger brother, something she probably assumed I wouldn't think of. When the phone unlocked, the dam broke. Messages filled the screen, most of them from Alex. Reading them felt like being stabbed over and over. Can't wait to see you tonight. What are you telling him? Does he even suspect? You looked amazing in that dress. Just wish I could have taken it off you myself. The texts were shameless, sickening. There were pictures, too. Her with him, their faces pressed together in the kind of intimacy I thought was reserved for us. There were receipts for gifts he'd given her, expensive dinners, and a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. I felt like a stranger reading someone else's life, someone else's wife. I didn't confront her right then. I knew better than to storm into the bathroom, phone in hand, and demand answers. She'd just lie, deny everything, maybe even turn it around on me for violating her privacy. I put the phone back where I found it, locked it, and returned to the house as though nothing had happened. The next step was the hardest, swallowing my pride and telling someone what was happening. I couldn't handle this alone anymore, so I called my brother, Chris. He'd always been my rock in tough times, the kind of person who could look at a problem and break it down with brutal honesty. I told him everything, what I'd seen, what I'd found, what I was planning. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before he finally said, "You've got to take her down, man. Don't let her walk all over you like this." It was exactly what I needed to hear. Chris didn't pity me, didn't sugarcoat things, or try to talk me into forgiveness. He was angry for me, and that gave me the strength I didn't realize I'd been missing. We hatched a plan over the next few days. I hired a private investigator to follow her, someone who could get me the kind of evidence that wouldn't just hold up in an argument but in court. I wasn't about to let her walk away from this without consequences. The PI worked fast. Within a week, I had photos of Stephanie and Alex meeting at hotels, kissing in parking lots, and even walking hand in hand down a street like a couple out on a date. He even caught them meeting during the workday, her car parked conspicuously at a cafe she'd never once mentioned to me. In the meantime, I started talking to a divorce lawyer. It felt surreal, sitting in an office discussing things like asset division and legal strategies while my marriage was still technically intact. But the lawyer assured me this was the right move. When it comes to cases like this, she said, the more evidence you have, the better off you'll be. Don't rush this. Gather everything, then hit her all at once. And so, I waited. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. Every night, I lay in bed next to Stephanie, her face lit by the glow of her phone as she texted Alex, thinking I didn't know. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still asked about my day, still wore the same wedding ring I'd slipped onto her finger almost 10 years ago. I started noticing cracks in her facade, though. She was jittery, distracted, her lies becoming less polished. One night, she claimed she had to work late but didn't even bother taking her laptop with her. Another time, she came home smelling like Alex's cologne, a scent I recognized from one of the photos the PI had sent me. Every time she tripped up, I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying something. Not yet, I reminded myself. Not until the moment is right. I started avoiding friends, dodging their questions about why I seemed so withdrawn. What could I say? Oh, nothing much, just watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. No, I kept it to myself, kept collecting, kept waiting. And then, just as I was beginning to wonder how much longer I could keep up the charade, something happened that would change everything. Stephanie came home one evening, her face pale, her eyes darting nervously. She sat across from me at the dinner table, not touching her food. Finally, she said, "We need to talk." I knew what was coming. She was going to try to confess, to spin some half-truth about a mistake or a moment of weakness. But I didn't let her. I smiled, leaned back in my chair, and said, "You're right. We do. But you first." Her expression shifted, confusion and fear flickering across her face. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control. Stephanie stared at me, her confidence unraveling. What do you mean, you first? She asked, her voice shaky. I leaned forward, placing my hands deliberately on the table. I think you already know, Steph. I've been watching, waiting, and collecting. Every lie, every hotel visit, every text message. I know everything. Her face drained of color, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, she tried to laugh it off, shaking her head. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and opened a folder of photos the private investigator had sent me. Sliding it across the table, I said, "Take a look. Go ahead. Explain to me how this isn't what it looks like." She didn't even touch the phone. Her eyes darted from the screen to me, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to come up with something. Anything that could salvage the situation. Finally, she stammered, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want your excuses. You've been lying to me for months, maybe longer, while I've been sitting here like an idiot, believing we were still in this together." Her tears came fast and hard. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she sobbed. "It just happened. I didn't mean to hurt you." "Didn't mean to hurt me?" I barked, my voice rising. "You snuck around behind my back, with him, in our bed. You lied every single day. And you think saying it just happened makes it better? I still love you." She blurted out. I laughed bitterly. "Love me? Don't make me laugh, Steph. You love yourself. You love the thrill, the attention, the lies. But me? I'm just the guy you kept around to fund your little double life." Her expression shifted from guilt to anger. "That's not fair," she snapped. "You don't know what it's like to feel stuck, to feel like you're invisible in your own marriage. Don't you dare blame me for your choices. We could have worked on this together. But instead, you ran to Alex, didn't you? Your solution was to destroy everything we built for a cheap thrill." She broke down again, mumbling apologies, promises to fix things, begging for another chance. But I'd already made up my mind. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," I said, my voice cold. "I've got enough evidence to end this marriage on my terms. You're going to get what you deserve." Her face twisted in desperation. "Please, don't do this. We can get through this. I'll cut it off with him. I'll go to therapy, whatever it takes." I stood, towering over her as she crumbled in her chair. "It's too late, Steph. You made your choices. Now, you live with them." She tried to stop me as I walked away, grabbing my arm, but I pulled free. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice as sharp as broken glass. That night, I packed a bag and left the house. Stephanie called me repeatedly, but I didn't answer. I went to stay with Chris, who greeted me with a firm handshake and a knowing look. "You did what you had to do," he said. Part 4. The fallout. The divorce process was grueling. Stephanie fought at first, but with the mountain of evidence I'd collected, she didn't stand a chance. My lawyer made sure of that. She tried to win me back during mediation, tearfully asking for another chance, but I shut her down every time. Friends and family were divided. Some took her side, saying I should have given her a second chance, that nobody's perfect. Others saw her for what she was, a selfish, deceitful partner who had shattered our marriage beyond repair. For me, the hardest part wasn't the legal battles or the gossip. It was the silence that followed. Coming home to an empty apartment, waking up alone, watching the life I'd spent nearly a decade building vanish overnight. I started therapy, not because I wanted to forgive Stephanie, but because I needed to figure out how to live again. I poured myself into work, spent more time with Chris and a few close friends, and even started going to the gym, channeling my anger and grief into something productive. As for Stephanie, I heard through mutual friends that things didn't go so well for her. Alex left her not long after the divorce was finalized, and she struggled to keep up her lifestyle without my support. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a sliver of satisfaction at that. But the truth is, there were no winners in this story. Just a mess of broken promises, shattered trust, and lives forever changed. Even now, months later, I'm still picking up the pieces. Some days are better than others. Some days, I feel like I'm finally moving on. Other days, the memories creep in, and I have to remind myself that this pain is temporary, that I'll find something, someone, better someday. For now, though, it's just me, trying to rebuild, one step at a time. Goodbye.